Greetings and welcome to the latest episode of the Vernon Richard Show. And we have some alternative names for that, thanks to James Thomas. Thank you very much.
Go on, what
And
are they? What are they, Vernon?
they are the Vern and Richard Show, the Vernon Richard Show, so Vern apostrophe N apostrophe Richard.
Ah, yeah.
And then there's one diabolical one, which is awful. That we can't go with it. It's just bad.
What?
It's Vern on Richard Show. Dreadful name. Can't go with that.
It's got
Dreadful.
It's got all the letters in it. Like it's perfect. It makes it sound like it's my show, and you're just on it.
Absolute classic from you, Bradshaw. Friendly tester my ass.
Oh, here it is. That's the first instance of that.
Oh my God, it is. I can't
How
believe
many
it's taken
times
me.
have I heard that? Yeah.
What's this, episode 4, whatever it is? I don't know, 3,
Episode-
4, wherever we are.
Depends if you're counting from zero. Depends if the smoke test
Yeah.
counts or not.
Anyway, we failed with the intro. Let's try this again. Welcome, everyone.
Welcome.
Sorry for that rambly intro. I'm Vernon.
And I'm Richard.
And yeah, we've been busy since the last episode. We're getting back on track with things. We're starting to build a bit of a routine, which is nice.
Yep.
It's been busy since we've last been on the pod. Rich has been off to very cool conferences, and I've been doing busy stuff at work. So I think we're going to spend most of the time talking about what Rich has been up to. And
yeah, well, I think we'll use that to trigger the topics. I think just generally promote what was a really good event. Because I think everyone should definitely go to this event if they get a chance.
Yeah, man.
And also, I think there was great topics that me and you can have a conversation about.
Mm-hmm.
And also, just to set the scene for people listening and watching, you will know that me and Vernon are fans of football, and we support very different teams, almost arch enemies. But our teams our teams are both playing right now as we're recording. So if you suddenly get interrupted with a yay or a woohoo or disappointment, it might be because our teams aren't doing so great, and especially as it's the Liverpool derby that's currently happening. So,
and even worse, hopefully we won't be on long enough for this. But if you hear a random "Hey Rich" or "Hey Vern," then you'll know the results.
Something's gone wrong if we're still on at the end of that.
Yeah.
But let's see. The conference I'm talking about is I went further north to Leeds at the weekend. No, it's not the weekend. It was on Tuesday. To the Leeds Testing Atelier. And that's just reminded me, Vernon. When was the first... Did you know what the word atelier meant when you saw the name?
I've looked it up, but I've since forgotten, and I'm going to quickly do it now. I mean, do you know what it means?
No, not at all. But it was the fact that event came out was the first thing that made me think of it. I know in French it means workshop.
Yes.
But I didn't know if it had a different meaning.
The private workshop or studio of a professional artist in the fine or decorative arts or an architect, where a principal, master, and a number of assistants, students, and apprentices can work together, producing fine art or visual art released under the master's name or supervision. Sick. I didn't even. How did I forget that?
So anyone listening to this who's not been to the atelier, one of the things that they do is they make all the signs themselves the night before. So people go the night before, and you make they make the signs for the names of the talks, the rooms, everything else, and maybe that's because of that, the artistic side of the atelier.
It's also because they are very punk. That's how they describe themselves, right?
Exactly. And it's in a very cool venue called the Wharf Chambers, I think it is. Very inclusive, diverse space in Leeds as well. But yeah, it was really good. Great to catch up with a lot of people I've not seen for a long time. Some people like a really long time, like pre-COVID. So it was great to catch up with them. And yeah, there was a great selection of talks. So, but I think you were going to do this, Vernon. Let's see. You were going to lead this by following, was it Jit's summary of events?
Let me find his post.
Oh, football result in. So, live from the studio, there has been a goal for Everton. It's currently 1-0. Gerard Braithwaite with what I imagine is a superb strike. and
Just
causing misery across many Liverpool fans' faces right now.
what I
Richard has a
didn't
future
see.
in commentary.
Oh mate, it's sad times. Hopefully, come on, you Reds, sort yourself out. Ugh. Anyway, back to the topic of Leeds Testing Atelier. I'll quickly get this out of the way so I can go and cry. Yeah, so Jit, I've got a post up here from Jit that he shared on LinkedIn yesterday. Shout out to you, Jit, and he's listed a bunch of people whose workshop and talks that he listened to and took part in. So do you want me to go through the list, Rich?
Yeah, just like pick one and I can tell you if I was there or not. Let's do it that way. And then I'll fill in the
Okay.
gaps with the ones I went to.
Okay, I will start from the top. The first one, Jit says, Elly Gausden delivered a great workshop and has given me loads of ideas to try back at the office.
Yeah, so Ellie gave, I don't know what the title was now, but it was about play. It was about the importance of play in the workplace and learning from play. So I believe she works at Co-op, Co-op Digital, and there's a few people from there. And she was talking about how they kind of have a lot of fun at Co-op and the importance of it. And the activity that she got us to do was, you know what? I don't have my bag. I think it's in my bag, but I will try and go from memory. So Snakes and Ladders, right? You've all played Snakes and Ladders. Do you play Snakes and Ladders with?
Yeah.
So they gave us an empty board of Snakes and Ladders, and it was to help. The framing she gave us was around exploratory testing, but generally onboarding new people. So the idea was that you had to design your own Snakes and Ladders game, and on the appropriate squares, you would have a testing challenge, but really simple. So their example was co-op. So if you roll a 3, you land on the number 3, and it says add 5 items to your basket, and then you're going to learn how to do that, and obviously they're going to get to watch you and see how that goes. So you could use it for user research, but you could use it for new people onboarding. You could
That's
generally
cool.
just use it for test ideas. If you're stuck of what to do, just play a game of Snakes and Ladders on your own. But and then she was explaining hers, and it had like remove items from your basket, pay for your basket,
Yeah.
general co-op kind of shop related things. But then
Yeah.
she challenged us to make our own for our own context. So for
Ooh,
me at
yeah.
the moment, a lot of my stuff's around memberships and subscriptions and buying products and stuff. So I was thinking more about some of the regression scenarios that we have, and I was populating my little game, and then you got to draw the snakes and where you'd come down. And but yeah, I found it really interesting, that side of it. And then the final one, she challenged us, or maybe I'll challenge you now. Let's see if you can do it. She said, think of a game you already know, and how would you turn it into a testing game?
What, like any game or
Yeah,
board?
so I'll give you my example, and while you give you a
Okay.
chance to think of one, I
Okay.
thought of battleships. So I remember as a kid, I had an electronic battleships, right? You say B7 and stuff, and it would
Yeah.
sink my ship and stuff like that. I was thinking my idea was, could you play that with like basically Jira tickets and pull requests and stuff like that, lines of code. So instead of like maybe the ships are bugged instead, and you say PR number 7, right, and you're basically squashing the bugs instead of sinking the ships, and you'd have to remember certain context of that bug to know which one it might be, because remember in the past you'd be like, well, I've sunk your 5 ship and I've done your other one. So yeah, that was one of my ideas. And then what was my second idea? Trying to go from memory. No, it's gone. It's not there. Have you thought of any?
Kind of. So my favorite board game of all time is called Colt Express. And basically, this game, it's not really well. It's a board game, but there's no board. It's more, the board is like a model of a train, and the objective is every player is a robber. Each robber has different abilities, and the winner of the game is the train robber who amasses the most swag, right?
Okay.
And the way you play, this will make sense soon. The way you play is that each turn you play a card, which gives an instruction to your character. Now, there are two things that can mess this up. One of the characters can play a card face down, so you can't see what he's done.
Okay.
And there's also some constraints on each round where you're in a tunnel, which again means you play the card face down, so you can't see what people have done. And what that means is you're effectively programming your players to do your characters to do stuff, and because people can, you can like say, oh, I saw Rich has gone that way, so I'm gonna react to that. But as soon as this cards start getting played down, you don't know what's going on, and it's absolutely hilarious. And that game reminds me a lot of programming and things not going according to plan. Like, oh yeah, I wrote the code to do this thing, but then when you actually flip the cards over and play out the actions and move it, things do not go according to plan. And I was like, this is absolutely about software development. It's got nothing to do with robbing trains. So yeah, that's my example.
So
but it's
you make
already
a testing version of that somehow, or a software version of that.
Yeah,
Nice.
it kind of already is. Colt Express, definitely go get it. That's not an affiliate or anything. The game's just sick.
I'm trying to think now of the examples that we saw as well. So I think Claire, I can't remember her surname. Claire from North Wales. She's often at Agile testing days. Surname's eluding me. She joined Newman. Norman?
Yeah.
Norman, yeah, Claire. I think her group came up with a play on Uno. And I can't remember the specifics of it, but it was like a testing version of Uno, which was kind of cool. And yeah, he was just generally talking about how the getting you playing is obviously a kind of more chill. It's more inclusive in some ways. It's kind of not as like, oh God, we've got to do training again or whatever, right? It's a bit more enjoyable and entertainment. And she mentioned things like Lego Serious Play, which I've still never actually been to a session of Lego Serious Play. It comes up all the time, but I've never actually been to one. Need to get myself to one of them. And the reminded me of my Lego automation workshop, where again, introducing that element of play to teach something in a slightly different manner. Was I think it's like two different things. One is using, like fun methods to teach something, whereas the other one is just making something more interesting by turning it into a game. So yeah, it was really good fun. She smashed it, delivering a really hands-on. It was a 60-minute talk, but it was delivered as a talk, and then absolutely, giving us challenges to do. Why are you laughing so much?
CD scored.
Oh, what? Outrageous. I hope it gets VAR'd off yet. Let's see. Anyway, I didn't laugh this hard. You hope Everton don't score again, mate. We're playing United are playing Sheffield United, which is why he's laughing, because I think they are. Are they bottom of the league or
bottom?
Yeah, bottom of the table. Yeah,
they are toast.
Anyway, right. So yeah, props to Elly. Great session. What you're doing at Co-op Digital looks incredibly good fun as well. So if anyone sees a job opening there that looks interesting, it sounds like they have a great time there. Very collaborative, very open. Look like a good place to be.
And I hope I'm pronouncing your name properly, Elly. Is it Gausden or Gausden? So forgive me if I'm mispronouncing it. Okay, shall we look at the next name on Jit's post?
Let's go.
So his next one, he's saying, Elliot Thurland gave a great talk on the Post Office Horizon scandal. If you've not looked into what happened there, then it's pretty shocking. Did you go to that one?
I didn't go, and I think the reason why I didn't go is obviously you've always got to make a decision at a conference, right? That's one of the tricky things. I think it's because I've read a lot of James Christie's blogs on the topic. I opted to go for something else.
Just for context, for anyone who doesn't know about this is, if anyone, it's one of those moments where the importance of software testing and bug reporting and software development is absolutely stark. Like, it's just unequivocal. So, situation is, what, 2 decades, 20 years ago, 30 years ago? Quite some time
Somewhere
ago.
between there, yeah.
The post office in the UK, who are primarily responsible for delivering our letters, they commissioned some consultancies to build themselves a new system for postmasters and postmistresses, the people who run the post offices in the UK, like an EPOS system, electronic point of sale. and the software would also do all the reckoning up at the end of the day. And long story short, that software had a bug in it, which meant that, let's say I'd actually taken £100 that day, the till and the software would say I'd only taken, I don't know, 90 quid or 80 quid. And so these postmasters and postmistresses who'd all been, absolutely fine before were now being accused by the post office of stealing. And they were like, well, no, this, like, the machine, like, the software is buggy.
Yeah.
And the post office was like, no, absolutely not. You're all thieves and we're going to prosecute the lot of you. And they did. And the consequences were absolutely grim. Many people went to jail. Many people lost their livelihoods because obviously, the post office prosecuted them. And even more horribly, some people took their own lives as a result of this. And it's unbelievable that it happened. And a lot of governments dropped the ball on this over many years. So if you want to hear some more about this, there's two resources I can recommend. One of them Rich already mentioned, which is James Christie. James Christie used to be an auditor, then became a tester and worked in software development for many years. And he is incredibly good at explaining stuff. And he has done a lot of research into this, and it's a grim read, but it's also an insightful read. So go and look at all his materials. And then the other one is a really good documentary series on the BBC. I'm not sure if I hope it's still available.
I think it's
try and find
ITV,
it.
isn't it?
Well, why it's so prominent now is because ITV made a TV show about it recently, and that really brought it to the fore. Which I haven't watched it actually, but I listened to the BBC radio series about it some years ago, and I actually couldn't believe it. So that is the short version, by the way.
I think the important bit, like you said there, though, is like we always try and think of the people like who our software is going to be used by, right, all the time. But like in some spaces, like yes, we're thinking how that could go wrong, but like I admit I don't always frame it from the end user point of view. Like I'm going, I wonder if there's a way of that getting negative, right? As opposed to is there a way that I can make that not add up? As opposed to will someone lose their job if that doesn't add up, right? They're very different like
Correct.
framings for that testing. And often I'm very much in the software model function space as opposed to the person space of how would that person be? What would happen to their life if this went wrong? And it reminds me of the headline game that Elisabeth Hendrickson introduced me to for your software. Like, what's the worst possible headline you could wake up to tomorrow for your product?
Yeah.
And then as a group, you try and reverse engineer it to see if it could actually happen. And I think that, again, that ties back into that idea of play as well. It's like, it's a very different way of framing going about testing. And I remember, I think it's in the book I think it's an Explorer, or maybe she did it at a training, I'm not sure, but
it's an Explorer.
I definitely got it from her. Yeah.
It's an Explorer. I mean, thinking about the second and third order effects of a bug is absolute, like, that can really really help you report your bug more effectively. And I learned a ton from I did the bug advocacy course, the black box software testing bug advocacy course maybe 10 years ago. I think the AST are in the midst of updating it, and I know that Altum also.
Altum offer it, I believe.
Where are they based, Altum? They're in Romania.
Romania and Finland, I believe.
And Finland, yes. Romania and Finland. Definitely
biggest places, I believe.
Definitely check those out because they've got some good information about that. But Kelsey Hightower gave a really good example of this last year at the Manchester Tech Fest when we had a fireside chat. He talked about this. By the way, if you ever have a chance to listen to Kelsey Hightower talk about anything, take the chance. And I mean anything. He could be talking about the lint in his pocket, and he will reveal the secrets of the universe in that talk. But in this talk, he was talking about how he was on a team that was dealing with a production issue. And the team, you're in your war room, I guess, trying to figure things out. And I'm butchering this story when it's compared to Kelsey telling it, but he felt that the energy was off in the room, and so he's kind of got everyone's attention and kind of said, look, because it was something to do with transactions on credit cards. That was the issue. People couldn't pay for stuff, and he's like, look, right
Oh, I
now
remember this.
there is a family
Yes.
in a supermarket. The only way they can pay is with our credit card.
It
They
was
have
it was a
no.
version. It was the American version of Universal Credit, where
Yes,
when
yes,
food stamps went
yes,
electronic. I think it
yes.
was.
And he's like, they have no other way to pay for what they are buying. The queue is backing up behind them, and this thing is not working.
Yeah.
That's why we need to get this thing fixed. And now it's the whole new level of seriousness now has just been applied to the situation. And that's why it's really important to try and frame these things in a really,
Yeah.
impact in as impactful a way as you possibly can. There's a human being affected or could be affected by this problem that we found. But anyway, for a
Well,
talk
this
that we
is.
didn't see, we talked about it a lot.
But there's actually a talk that I didn't write down because I was like, sometimes you're just listening intently. There was a talk later on in the day with Leah, King, and Tracy Archibald about killer bugs and how to squash them. They build medical software for testing your eyes and doing LASIK and stuff like that.
Wow.
And they were talking about things like a field or a form not showing the data as it used to be, which could cause the technician not to notice, which could cause them to do the wrong procedure. So they were talking about I can't remember the exact framing now, but like the severity of the bug and then like the impact of it. I'm going to get their word wrong and I apologize, but it was like, having a field wrong on there is not too bad. Oh yeah, they had a scale basically for the risk of lives. It was could injure multiple people at the same time, death could kill multiple people at the same time. The second one was could kill an individual, could cause death to an individual. The framing was multiple people at the same time as in the same moment, right? Whereas the second one was could kill one person, but it could kill 1,000 people at the individually. Yeah.
Bloody
and then
hell.
the next one was could cause long lasting damage, life altering damage. And then there was a second one which was kind of less severe damage, and then the other one was kind of wouldn't cause any damage. But they were going through bugs that way. Like, yes, it's a field wrong on the screen, but the impact is massive. And that reminds me of like Kelsey's story there, where yes, I can't pay, which is bad, right?
Yeah.
But actually now I'm also embarrassed as hell, stood at the front of a supermarket, which is not even the worst bit of it. I also can't feed my family. I can't eat.
Right.
And that's it. It's not I can't pay. Whereas if you remember logging that bug, it'd be like, well, what's the bug where you can't pay? Right. But actually, when you come to think about how important is it to fix, and if you're not framing it in that second, third impact, it's like, well, someone can't feed their family. They can't feed, they couldn't feed somebody else. They can't feed themselves. Like it changes everything.
Man.
It does change everything. Right, yeah. So yeah, brought another talk into it there, but that was a really good talk just about how they framed bugs as well, and being in the medical space. And I've just seen that we've equalised, Vernon, getting 1-1, 1-1. Right. What's the next talk? What's next on Jit's list?
Oh, okay. Jit says Emily O'Connor showed us how to test a chatbot, and automation does play a part.
I've not done it, but have you used any of these recently?
What, a chatbot?
Yeah, like an AI one.
I don't know if it was AI. It was just as irritating as all the rest of them have ever been. So I don't know.
So we, in my current context, we use a payment gateway, and I went to their docs. Docs are great, right? But they've turned their docs into a bot. So not a bot as in go read this link bot. As a bot, as in like ChatGPT, basically framing the docs into answers for you. And like, well, I've got this. And then it was like giving me like really good link and a proper answer, which I tried to do and it worked like sometimes. But then other times I was like, I don't see that button. And then it would be like, oh, well, you're probably not seeing that button because you're not on this plan or because this has been configured separately. I was like, oh, this is amazing. And then it was like, well, how do I configure that? And like, it was usually the interactions I've had have been trying to just get through it to get to somebody. Whereas this was actually helping me. But yeah, I didn't go to that talk, but you got to make decisions, like I said before. But yeah, I've actually had a positive interaction with one of these bots recently.
I've heard about that. It's you effectively train ChatGPT. Well, I say ChatGPT. You train your LLM on your docs.
Yeah.
You just and then you can ask it sensible. Like I say, sensible.
Yeah.
Like you just conversate with the
Yep.
chatbot with the
That's
LLM.
it.
It's like, oh yeah, no, where's this button? Oh, you probably can't see it because that sounds pretty sick. That was not my experience of the chatbot that I was using the other day when I tried to get conned by.
You tried to get conned.
Well, I tried. I was. Oh dear, shall I name them? I won't name them. But I was renewing a domain with a provider,
Okay.
and they said your domain is about to expire. And I was like, oh, okay, I better go and pay for that. And so I paid for it. And then the message on screen was like, you haven't paid. Like, oh, okay, I'll pay again. And ended up paying twice.
That's fine.
And then,
Before you go any further, that intrigues me because my brain's like, no, I've paid. Like, I ain't paying again. Like, I wouldn't even entertain the idea of going to try and pay again as a solution.
Mm-hmm.
So the fact you did that's also intriguing me.
So I had that reaction after the second time it failed.
Right.
I was like, huh? Nah, this is
so you've got too much money. Basically, you're happy to pay for things twice. It's the third time of paying for something. You're like, oof,
that
too
could
much.
not be further from the truth. Oh my god. Anyway, yeah,
so you paid twice.
I ended up having to, interact with the chatbot to try and get through to a human. And the only thing a chatbot is good for is preventing you from getting to a human. So that was, that was interesting. And then when I got through to a human, the human acted like a chatbot and tried to tell me that they couldn't possibly help me. It's just an infuriating experience. Until the third person that I got through to was like, oh, why don't you call up? Because the people on the ends of the phone have got way more privileges and can do way more than. And I was like, why? Okay. So then I called and sorted it out in like 5 minutes. Just the whole thing was annoying. Anyway, that was a massive tangent.
There was a really good chatbot thing related to this though during COVID. I think it was hotels.com. They quickly knocked up something. I don't know if it was AI powered or not, but it was basically allowed you to get to the cancelling of bookings really quickly and get your money back. Like no questions asked kind of refund. And the bot was very specifically designed to handle that scenario. I'm guessing because maybe the volume of inquiries that were coming in and stuff, that it was an easier way of doing it. But like basically, he answered a few questions, and it just let you cancel. Don't know if it was a bug. Maybe it was a bug. Who knows? But yeah, chatbots, they're out there, and hopefully getting a little bit better for certain use cases. I think it's good for getting information. I'm not sure about like getting through a more complex, serious kind of give me my money back flow. But we'll see.
Okay, let's see. So the next one Jit talks about was by Stephen Milne. It says, Stephen Milne showed us how screen readers work and how we can improve our web apps, with a shout out to the BBC Ali team in there too. Jit works at the BBC as well. You see, he works on the iPlayer and Sounds team. So it's a shout out for the B teams there.
They did. I even wrote it down that check out the BBC article. So yeah, he gave a really good talk about screen readers, and from a point of view of using them, the importance of doing it, like why we should even care, the importance of accessibility. That was kind of like, the underlying thing. But the way he structured the talk was he showed us, he didn't even show us the actual website. He first played a recording of the screen reader and says, what do you think this website looks like? And obviously none of us got close, right? It was played at full speed that people listened to it. Say people listen to it, the speed that a visually impaired or a person using a screen reader day to day would listen to it, which I believe was 400 words per minute, I think is what he said from memory.
Oh, good.
So this thing was flying. It was like email field, visible, active, button, next. And it was like just ripping through this. And I was like, whoa. Yeah. And then he was asking us, right, so what do you think this looks like? And we're all laughing. I have no idea. And then he started basically piecing it, showing us, like, do you think it might look like this? And then do you think it might look like that? And then he went, let's listen to it again, obviously a bit slower. And then we were all going, oh, no, I don't think it does look like that. And we basically got to the end of the page where he showed us what the form looked like. And it was a user, your name field, so your full name. And then there was a grayed out text box for your there was a label for your I'm getting it all wrong now. There was a paragraph with your name, your email address, sorry. And then there was a button that said save changes. So he then showed us what this page was like, and then he basically taught us all the flaws that are wrong with this page. So
from an
accessibility screen reader perspective.
Okay.
So basically, the fact that the save button was outside of the paragraph. There was the input field. Then there was a separate section with the email address in as a label, basically a paragraph, and then there was the save button. So they were all detached. So you're kind of now listening to the screen reader and like, well, is this button related to the email address paragraph? But then there's no other button on the page, and it was all getting a bit confusing. And he taught me something because I wrote it down. So I've built lots of like front ends and stuff like this. And, if I'm thinking of showing a piece of information, I usually put it in a paragraph, right? Or a span or a header or something like that. Even if it's showing the results of a form field. And what this is and what he was showing us was, even if because it's a form, which it was, right? It was a form to basically change your name is what this page was. Showing you your email address. Oh, that was it as well. The email address had a change email button next to it. And then the bottom of the page had a save button. Hopefully you're following along. But essentially
page and form was in absolute shambles.
Yeah, but he basically said it was a very common pattern that you see, though. Like, usually there's a save button at the bottom of a page, and then somewhere in that page, there's information that you can alter, there's information you can read, but it's all usually structured in, like, not in a very accessible way, but for a screen reader. So the way he confirmed it was, the way it should have been is, the reason why they had the change email on a separate page and everything else, right, is because it's easier from a code point of view. You have one controller for changing your email. You have one set of code. You have one page for changing your email. You have one page for changing your name. It goes to a controller. You change your name, right? Or even an API, right? However your code's structured. Whereas he was saying, well, no, you need to put them all on the same page and deal with that logic on the back end. Make it easier for your users. So he rewrote the form to have name, email field, and then save changes, right?
Name, email field, okay.
And then, because now that's all in one form, the screen reader can understand that they're related, and that the save button is related to those two fields because they're now grouped together in semantic HTML. He made a very good point as well about using semantic HTML.
Okay.
But the thing that blew my mind, which I've never done, and I've built a lot of websites and pages, was when you show information back, such as email, name, whatever, right? You should still use an input field, but use the read-only attribute of that field. Because it then shows the screen reader that it's actually a piece of information that's been provided, as opposed to just a general paragraph on the page that has someone's name in it.
And then it would read it out appropriately, would it?
And then it would say input read-only field, email address. And also because when you use an input field, you get to give it a label. And therefore it has an accessible label, as opposed to having like a, styled HTML that, might say email and then your email. That isn't accessible because the screen reader doesn't know they're connected. Because the only way to connect stuff is with semantic HTML with inputs and labels. So if you have a read-only field, you can still style it to look however you want it to look. But marking that input field as read-only and having a label for it that says email would make the screen reader go, email, richard@whatever.com, read-only. And it's completely different flow. So yeah, hopefully I've made sense with what that was, but it was about using semantic HTML and structuring pages in a way that it flows for a screen reader instead of jumping around, which was really interesting.
That is incredible. I think So I've got a very beautiful teammate by the name of Paul Coles. He's an absolute legend, and he was helping me and another one of my teammates. Shout out to you, Rita of Water. We were doing some accessibility testing at work last year, and Paul really helped us um, level up our accessibility know-how. And he shared with us this really good talk. I'll find it, I'll dig it out, and I'll add it to the show notes because it was the same as what Rich described. It had somebody. I'm pretty sure he was he totally blind. I think he was. He had zero vision, I think, or maybe a little
Right.
bit. So he used the screen reader, and it's exactly as you described. I didn't know that that's how people use the screen. Just that information alone was valuable. So, this is how people actually use a screen reader. Okay, good to know. So it's a really insightful video. I will share it. It's a really important topic that I think more of us need to start getting our heads around, even if it's just so the low hanging fruit and the real obvious mistakes, we can help avoid them. So thank you very much indeed for doing that talk, Mr. Milne. You
And
absolute legend.
he gave a really good rule as well. He was like, nothing should be unlabeled. Like that was the rule. Like,
Okay.
that was kind of the holy grail of like making sure, things are accessible. So, any inputs, anything like that should always be labeled to make it easy to read by the screen reader.
I'm not
And
surprised.
go on.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say, I'm not surprised the BBC
Yeah.
Ali. So for those folks who don't know, the BBC is the public broadcaster, the national broadcaster in the UK, I guess. So the amount of things that they have to support, by things I mean devices and browsers and all the rest of it, is ridiculous. So if
Yeah.
anyone has to get their heads around this in a real serious way, it's probably them. So yeah, shout out to them.
One more takeaway from this talk that came up in a Q&A was about cookie banners. And
No.
Stephen kind of laughed and said it's hilarious because, it's bad, but like funny at the same time. In that people aren't paying attention to this. Was the people structure them so that the cookie banners at the bottom of the DOM. So screen
Mm.
readers basically read the whole website to you before you get to the cookie banner because it's been coded badly, and it immediately made me want to go off and like try on various websites because in my head I can view how that would be wrong because you would have to label all the pages like not necessary, and you'd have to really structure the page properly for that because focus isn't enough. Like it would read it all and then go cookie banner focus, as opposed to it being the first thing the screen reader comes to. And he didn't go into lots of answers about how to do it, but it made me want to go away and go, how would you do that? Like, how would you actually code that to make sure that that's the thing the screen reader gets first and not the rest of the DOM, which could be massive depending on what the page was. But
I'll,
yeah,
I'll I'll include some links to some accessibility tools and stuff
and
in the.
one thing to say about Stephen as well, he's a developer slash designer. So again, it was awesome to just have other roles at a testing conference talking about testing.
Man, shout out to you, Stephen. You absolute legend. Okay, next one from Jit's post is this. Colin W taught us all about user flow mapping and how it can help build a joint team understanding of the work teams need to do and to finish off the day.
I didn't go, but it's something that I do. I might not do it by the book of user mapping and etc., but it's one thing that I do straight away. I think we spoke about in one of the episodes mental models and stuff, and that's part of what I need to do. I kind of do them in a user and a technical flow at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Like I want to, as I'm going through these screens, like the way I draw it, like the flow across the top, which is probably maybe close to being the equivalent of user mapping. But then underneath that, I like to then list what's gone on under the hood. Was it an API call or was it just saved in state? If it was an API call, was there multiple calls? Did it go to a DB? Like what actually happened between those steps? Because I need to know that from the way I like to test, maybe a bit more technical in some aspects, but
Mm-hmm.
also thinking of automating it. and thinking of data creation and thinking of state management. I need that in my head to be able to work.
I'm quickly like Googling user flow mapping because I want to know if it's what I think it is. It is what I think it is. Okay. Yeah, I think this is a very useful thing to do, and I don't think I've done enough of it over the years in the teams that I've been on. So I think I'm going to give that a go back in the office for my project. I'm pretty sure where I work we have some user flow maps for the app that I'm working on. We've definitely been talking about them. I've definitely been looking at one or two more recently based on some of the work that we're doing. So yeah, and they'd be really useful for me to look at as well because I'm kind of new to the team, so it would help me on board and kind of think, well, what even is going on around here anyway? So that would be like a double.
Definitely, yeah. And from a testing point of view, similar models, like a lot of models are very similar, but we get different names. If you were going to do like even just the flow diagram that a lot of us maybe
Yeah,
get taught in some of the certifications that exist in testing, right? It's like, the different ways, decision points you can go to. Have you covered the whole tree? But, it's more from a higher level. Like I tend to use screenshots and use that. And then, as I said, technical under the hood. But anyway, you need to learn about a system. It's going to help you, especially when you go visual. I love visual stuff. So,
well, I like any model that makes it easier for you to talk about the change with the user flow diagram. When you're talking about a change, you could start to say, well, what's going to be different after we do implement this feature, like after we create this capability or whatever, what's going to be different? And then you compare that up with like an architecture diagram. It's like, okay, what calls are being made under the hood when I go from that screen to the other screen? Why are you smiling? Oh God, have we conceded another goal?
no, I'm smiling because I can see what you're doing, right? So if you're listening to this, Vernon's like moving his hand around, but he's actually pointing. He's got his finger out and he's pointing. And me and Mark Winteringham in our automation training, we talk about the importance of visualizing stuff because of what Mark coined as pointability. Your ability to point a diagram. And it is so much easier because if you don't have it, we're talking about different models in our head and we think we might be talking about the same thing,
Yeah, yeah,
but
big
we're
facts.
not. Whereas as soon as you visualize it, even if it's the worst drawing in the world, right? And we've all done those drawings, right? Where we start as a square, like this talks to that. And then if that maybe did that, and if that did that, and if this did it, right, you've got this epic squiggle on the board now. But because you did it together, you know what it means.
Mm,
So when you have this visualization, you can start pointing like, I think it happens there. I think it happens here. I wonder
mm,
what happens if from there to there. You
mm.
can't do that without that visual. Well, you can, but there's the danger that you're not on the same page. So
I
I
wonder,
just because I could see you doing this, it reminded me of that.
I wonder how you do that in an accessible way, though. Like, say you've got someone on your team who's visually impaired. Like,
Don't know.
how does that model manifest itself? I haven't really thought about that before. It's just because
Probably
we're
have
talking.
to describe. You probably need the visualization to then describe that visualization as opposed
Ah,
to basically sharing your thoughts so that they visualize it in their head their own way. Here
mm,
you would have to say this is a box connected to another box. Maybe be
mm,
a bit more explicit with I think a lot of people don't realize as well with visualization. A bit like when we spoke about abstracts last week. It's
mm.
getting it out of your head into some
Yeah.
form. It's not going to be correct, but it's going to be much better than like me before that in the same episode trying to explain Stephen's screen that he was building, right?
Yeah.
It's if I'd drawn that 5 minutes before talking about it, I probably
Mm.
would have found it a lot easier as opposed to doing it in real time. So it's that I think it's that explaining your attempt at visualizing it would make a big difference.
You just
Um,
you just reminded me. So when I was reviewing the last episode, I was doing it in the kitchen while I was cooking, and my wife was coming and like looked over my shoulder and looked at that I was watching it on a Surface Go, a tablet, and she was laughing because like whenever you talk, your hands are you're so much more expressive than Rich. Like Rich is not. using his hands, and your like hands are everywhere, and your face is doing crazy things. I was like, oh, okay.
I
That was
keep my, but I twitch a lot, so I'm holding. Like, I've usually got something in my hands that's stopping me from doing that.
yeah. I wonder how that affects things for the podcast. Like, I'm pointing at
But
stuff.
that leads into a talk that I know I did go to that Jit didn't, which was let me find the notes. It was Melissa Rocks, and it was communication with anxiety. So again, quite a good interactive session.
Sure, you want to get into this one, Rich? You don't want to check the results?
Oh, mate. Oh, the anxiety of being a United fan.
We're bloody losing. Like, this is no good.
Yeah, well, we're both losing now. But honestly, Melissa gave a really honest, vulnerable talk about her own struggles with anxiety and depression, talking about how basically she's quite open with it in the workplace and how that's improved what the way her work life, but also how she's now trying to use the same methods with the people that she's managing. And there was a few things that came up. She calls self doubt questions. Like, am I good enough? Can I do that? Is this and that? She calls them brain weasels, which I really liked. And yeah, she was like talking about how she has all these brain weasels. But the biggest takeaway for me was thinking about what you can do to reduce someone's anxiety in the workplace. So not even without necessarily knowing that that person is anxious. I think when you do know that and you've built that relationship, then I think obviously you should be doing it. But also just generally, what can you do to reduce some of that anxiety? And she gave us she challenged us to think of ways of what currently happens that makes you anxious in the workplace. So the common one that everyone joked about was, Vernon, I think we need to have a chat. Can we have a little talk?
Oh man.
I think we've all been there, right? The Slack message, let's have a little chat. And I think I think the Slack message is also bad, but I've had it in real life as well, where it's like, I think we need to have a chat. And I'm like, can we not just do it now? Like, why are you telling me? Like, and it's like we're literally stood here with each other now. Let's just have the chat. And if we can't be done right now, is it really a chat, or like, what is it? And then that's it. You're now anxious. You're thinking about it. You're over. You're worrying.
Yeah.
And then and then she was saying, what could you do to basically stop that, to reduce that for somebody else. Sorry, no, there's a step in the middle, an important step in the middle. She was like, what are other people doing? And then she asked us, do we do any of them? So we were all quite open quite quickly about, oh God, I hate when people do that, and that makes me anxious. And, meetings with no agendas came up. In this, can we have a chat? And then we were like, what do we do? And I was like, well, what do I do? And I often ping developers saying, can you help me? Like I was thinking about that. Does that reduce, increase anxiety? Maybe, I'm not sure. And then she was asking, what can we do to mitigate it? So I've made a note here. It was, Vernon, can we have a chat? Don't worry, it's all good. Like, there's nothing to worry about. Just gonna have a chat. Does that help? Maybe it helps. Depends how much you know that person, maybe.
Yeah, I still dislike it because
Is that because you're having a chat with me, or just?
That's always the issue. Friendly me asked that. No, I always find it. I'm realizing that I am not. It depends who's saying it, I think. So maybe it does come down to that trust thing. But it depends on a bunch of different things, to be honest. Like, when are they saying it? How are they saying it? Like, even if they're saying, "Oh, don't worry about it. It's fine." That there's ways you can say, "Don't worry," everything's fine. And there are contexts in which you can say, "Oh, everything's fine," that are going to make you think things are not fine at all. Do you know what I mean? So, but I know what they're getting at for sure. There's definitely ways you can just not take the necessary care and cause a lot of anxiety.
Yeah.
Just by not being mindful of how what you're saying is going to be received by the person. And also, if in fact, forget that. If you, for whatever reason, if you're not aware of how that person thinks, and that if you're a leader of people and you don't have a sense of how the people in your team communicate and how, to some degree, how they perceive the world and what makes them comfortable and uncomfortable, then again, you increase the odds of causing some inadvertent damage.
And that's the takeaway for those on the watching, not watching. I'm just showing people my notebook. She made a kind of a call to action to say, look, if your manager's not done that, you tell them. So she was like, talk to your managers, tell them about how you would like to be managed and how you would like to be interacted with. That's going to help you manage, your anxiety. If it's a case that you have that.
Okay. Nice. Nice.
And then a fun thing she did, which was she introduced spoon theory, which I actually knew about, but I asked you off air if you knew about spoon theory.
Never heard.
It's basically
sounds almost like an HR issue going on there.
No. So essentially, right, if you're having a really good day, right, like the example would be you're having a really good day, so you might wake up, incredible mood, you've got 20 spoons that you can spend for the day. And then certain activities take a number of spoons off you. So brushing your teeth, having a shower, right, might take 2 of your spoons away. So now you've got 18 spoons, right? The effort of driving to work is going to take a couple of spoons off you. You've got to go to a planning meeting. That's taken a few spoons off you. So, come to the end of the day, you might only have a few spoons left, but you still might have all these tasks to do or whatever, right? Or if you're planning your day and you've got a few spoons, you can maybe plan it in a way that's going to help you. So don't do don't clean the bathroom today, right? Because you've only got 10 spoons. That's going to take 5 off you, and now you've only got 5 left for the day. So she gave us a worksheet to go off that already had, pre-assigned numbers of spoons for various tasks. But she was telling you to think about that, and on certain days where you've only got a few spoons, make sure you look after yourself and you're selective with the tasks you take. Because also she was talking about how some people, they get into negative spoons and then they carry that for a few days. So you might end up, minus 5 spoons, and now you're going to have to get those 5 spoons back at some point because you only have a finite number. So you might have a knock-on effect for a couple of days now where you're chasing your tail or you're constantly tired or whatever, right? So yeah, that's spoon theory. It's this idea of having a number of spoons and doing things and spends them. And even the mundane stuff takes your spoons away, right? The just feeding yourself, right? Cooking, right? These things take your spoons away. But I think the important one was acknowledging it, like if you realize you've got not got much left, maybe that's a sign to, have a ready meal or just have beans on toast or something, or order food, right? Something lightweight because you've acknowledged that I've spent my spoons already. And if I go now and cook myself a 60-minute, 30-minute meal or whatever, right, I'm going to put myself in negative spoon territory. So I think it's like an analogy for energy, maybe. I'm not sure. Mood, energy, whatever.
That's almost like what's the? It reminds me of a saying. Parental advice is parental advisory warning. Like I don't have any fucks left to give. That's what it.
I was about to say. That's what I thought when she said it.
Fresh out of fucks, man. I got none left.
Yeah, I've seen people have T-shirts with that say "No fucks to give, no fucks left."
Like, what's the measurement of a spoon? Do you know what I mean? Like, how do you know how many spoons you've got? It's like story points. How much is one? Is my if I've got 1 spoon, how many rich spoons is equivalent to 1 Vern spoon?
I don't know. That's a good point. Someone did mention that in our group. I think, not all spoons are created, not all spoons are equal, or the activities. But there was one thing that the analogy I've just come off, just glancing at my phone to see if there's any football changes, is like just thinking of it as like your battery level. You know what I mean? Like certain activities on your phone drain your battery. It'll be the same for you on any given day, right? Like I use cooking a minute. I love cooking. Like cooking actually probably recharges my battery. Like even though maybe mentally my battery, but not my physical one, obviously, right? Because I'm expelling energy. But yeah, it was a really good talk anyway, and made me reflect a lot about some of the interactions I have at work, and sometimes I feel like I don't call out people who do some of that anxiety reducing behavior. Like tomorrow, I've got a meeting, which is it's like a late minute kind of like I can't remember what they called it, like bringing people up to speed kind of session. That's all it says, and it's like, well, what are we being brought up to speed on? Like, is it something good? Is it something bad? Like, what is it? Just give us a brief agenda. But like sometimes, I've not called it out. Like maybe I should. I don't know.
Maybe like see what it's see what it's about. I suppose. Well, I suppose you got no choice. No one's going to answer your message now. So it's like,
Yeah, true.
You'll find out tomorrow. So the last one on Jit's list is Ian Thomas showed us how they test at Meta, and more specifically, how to test VR apps. It's great to see that the test pyramid is still going strong.
Is it? I hate the pyramid. I need that on a t-shirt. I hate the test pyramid. I didn't make it to that one. I think again, it's I've got an allergic reaction to the test pyramid. So, while I imagine it will be really like, it's more the way there's talks from me on YouTube. We'll do the whole link thing. We can't do the link thing yet. We need 1,000 subscribers to do the link thing. We need some more subscribers. To do external links. Subscribe. But there's a talk on YouTube where I talk about the pyramid, and it's more when people use it as a strategy as opposed to, for me, a heuristic. That's my preference for the model. But I do think it encourages you to think of the layers in your system, which I think that talk, I imagine, would have been about that. What layers exist in a VR system that you can test on? So your eyes have like gone, woof, what's happened? Oh, double whammy. 2-2 United, 2-0 Everton. Oh my goodness, Vernon. I think we might have to keep this. Might have to do 90 minutes on this podcast just to get to the end of the games. Oh, mate, I feel for you. Not. So yeah, that. But what you've just seen there actually is how I react when I hear the word test pyramid. For those not listening, Vernon is in utter despair right now. But there was one more talk that I'll go to. But before we talk about the final talk, I just want to, this is a talk about me going to Atelier, right? But it shows the power of going to a conference, that there was so many topics that have been open to me, and now I'm talking about them with you, and you're listening to them, and they might be triggering you to go research something based on what we're listening. And that, for me, that's the kind of, there's multiple things, but two that stand out for me with conferences. It is that connecting with people, networking, friendships, if you're a speaker, having people come talk to you about your stuff. Like, there's lots of ways of actually connecting with people and talking to them. I think that's massively important. But then just this kind of trigger to remember experiences and topics and a list of things to go and look at, like my notes, the way I remembered how I took notes, because I'm back in the hands-on QE role, right? So now I'm listening a lot more intently to a lot of the talks, because I'm doing that job again. And I remembered that I used to use icons for my notes. So like if it's a tool, I draw a little spanner. If it's a book, I draw a book. If it's an article, I draw a little memo article, right? And that's reminded me of my notes. But yeah, conferences, listening to things like this podcast, reading articles, they're all just great ways of thinking of finding topics that might, trigger your next learning.
Yeah, 100%, folks. Like, go and consume all the resources out there, the books, the other podcasts that are out there, the ones that we listen to. I was just listening to the Adobo and Avocado. Well, is it a podcast? I don't know. The live stream with Alexandra. She's gonna hate me. Alex Schladderback. Sorry, Alex. Gave you the full name. Yeah, go and consume all that stuff. But in particular, whenever you get a chance, if you get a chance, try and interact with people and build up your network and build up your knowledge, and then crucially implement what you've learned. Like experiment with what you've learned. Try and use it. You know, especially with topics like accessibility. That's where we can really make a big difference.
Absolutely. And yeah, so the final session, not the final session I went to, but the final session we're going to talk about is Jit himself. So we spoke about Jit talking at PeersCon, but like Jit is, you know, like we said last time, fantastic speaker, great at sharing his experiences. This time round, he was talking about speed versus quality, and can we have both? So the way he structured it was kind of the way that it's viewed, you know, that we want more quality, so we work harder, right? So what tends to happen is the amount of effort goes up, but the quality actually tends to go down because we end up starting doing bad work and so forth. And we struggle. And then he was talking about actually we don't want to work harder, we want to work smarter. But the one thing that I made a note of, he shared a lot of fantastic ways of doing that, but he called out the dip that you usually see when you start to try and work smarter. So people expect it just to suddenly go up, but actually you're probably going to see a dip in quality whilst those smarter ways of working form and cement themselves in place, and then you'll probably start to see that rise.
Yeah, I think I've seen that graph. Well, I've seen that talk. I'm just trying to look for the graph. I've got a pal called Kyle Goodman, who runs a software house called Viva IT, and he calls it, what's he call it, man? Something like the trough of disappointment or something like that.
Okay. Yeah, I can understand
Like
that.
you get a new idea or you learn this new thing, and you're like, this is going to be absolutely fantastic, but that's when your ignorance is at its maximum.
Right.
And then as the reality of how difficult, or you know, how it's significantly less or more difficult than you thought it was going to be, then you're like, oh god, this is going to be so bloody awful. And then you start to climb out of it as your ignorance decreases and your skill improves.
That's kind of interesting, because I'm just reading my notes again, and like the way he broke down learning smart, and I think I missed a bit off because I think I was thinking about something, was your team needs to adopt that learning mindset. He was talking a lot about that learning mindset, but he was talking about two ways particularly of doing that. One is flow, so the way that the work is flowing through the team, and is it actually flowing, or is it, you know, starting to get like, you know, stuck in places or so forth, just like gatekeeping and things. But then he spoke a lot about you need to, because he was talking about this from a whole team approach, right? It wasn't just like, you know, quality as in, you know, testing's the only way, right? He was talking about it holistically. And then he was saying about in each capability needs also to have a plan to improve itself, to continue that working smartly. So, you know, yes, you can do things to the whole, like do air quotes, agile, right? Your whole way of working, your software delivery life cycle, you can start to make improvements to that. But you also need to be thinking, how can we dev better? How can we test better? How can we document better? How can we use Jira better? Whatever it is, right? Constantly having those little areas improving themselves as well within the wider improvement, which was a nice thing. And then he mentioned a little bit about metrics. So, you know, if you're going to start talking about improving quality and, improving speed, it's like, how do you measure that? Like, what is your measurement of speed? Like, that's got to be clearly defined up front. And he mentioned Dora explicitly about their mean time to release as quite a useful metric for speed. Maybe not so much around quality, perhaps, but it's a good one for speed. So yeah, it was like, if you're going to do it, you've got to do it smartly. You've got to have a plan. You've got a strategy. You've got to be thinking big picture, but also small, like capability kind of improvements. But then, yeah, you've got to have some agreed way of measuring it. Otherwise, you know, if you just suddenly change what how you measure quality halfway through, it's going to screw you up. So
Yeah, you could be struggling. I found the graph. It's the hype cycle. It's the trough of disillusionment.
the hype
When you get
cycle.
over the peak of inflated expectations into the trough of disillusionment.
I love it.
But yeah, I think the thing I want to say about that is, I did I forget what the name of the course was. It was a course by a chap called Troy McGuinness or McGuinness. I think that's how I pronounce it. I think he's a Kiwi. I think he's from New Zealand, lives in the US, and it was a course about coaching your team with data. And he talked about Dora, and he was like saying, well, actually, they might be lagging indicators, and what's an interesting exercise to do is to kind of say, well, what are the things that precede, say, throughput? Like, how would you know that your throughput was going to go up or down? Like, if it was going to go down, maybe you'd overcommitted to some work in your sprint or your cycle, for example. And maybe that might be a leading indicator of your throughput going down. So I thought that was interesting. But yeah, anything Jit's got to say about anything, I will listen to. Is that talk online anywhere? Because they don't
record them.
their
Yeah,
talks
they
at
did
Atelier,
record
do they?
them. I think they go on the YouTube for Atelier. So yeah, that's a really good point, Vernon, that I did not even entertain. You can watch all these talks and realise if Richard's talking utter gibberish or his memory's shot or whatever. But yeah, they were recorded. So yeah, they should be on somewhere. I'm gonna guess YouTube.
That channel's going in the show notes, and I'll try and depends on when we post this thing. But if the talks are up, I'll link directly to the talks. If not, I'll just link to the channel, and you can.
Yep, awesome.
See
So
them there.
Let me check.
The last...
So yeah, one done that one. I went to another talk which was about exploratory testing from Brian Elmer, which I'd already seen at a meetup in Manchester. But yeah, he basically gave us a good insight into their view of exploratory testing. Gave us quite a fun challenge of how would you test a lift, explicitly trying to break down the what you would test, as in because people generally have ideas quite quickly, but then also why would you test that?
Yeah.
And then explicitly about how you would go about testing that. So yeah, it was, that's kind of a model I feel you could use for any aspect of testing. But when even if you're doing exploratory testing, sometimes the ideas are flowing, right? And it's like, actually, what do I do, kind of first, and go about doing that. And then he was mentioning one thing I did write down, which was kind of more about how I view it. Brian spoke a lot about breaking things and how he loves as a tester, to break things, and that's kind of his mission. And it's just like, I really want to break it. I want to find out, I want to find ways of breaking it. But it made me think I was trying to think of an analogy for it, but yes, I want I know I view things as I reveal where they're broken, but my curiosity goes to, and it has done. I've already mentioned it in the same episode, but I'm curious about how it works. That's the thing I get to. It's like, yes, this product's here, but I'm like, how was it built? How was it hung together? Because that's going to help me think of ways that I can go about finding if it's broken. For me, it's more like, yes, I want to break it, but my immediate one is, how does it work? How does it hang together? And I want to know that, because then I can find the cracks and get my testing skills inside there and see if I can pull it apart.
That is yeah. I used to say that all the time, that I break software. But yeah, I suppose it's not actually true. It arrives how it arrives, and at least part of our job is to figure out what state is it in, and how does that compare to the state
I
that we
gave
think
a
it's
talk
in.
recently at a meetup in Macclesfield. It's my developer tester relationship talk, and it's just loads of little doodles that I drawn, and I kind of change the narrative depending on where I am at the same time. But one of the doodles is basically putting an X-ray machine over the product, and then there's basically broken pipes, and you can see the internal workings of the system. So I use that to basically talk about I didn't break it, a lot of testers get great pride in going around going, I've broken it. And it's like, well, you didn't break it. You found where it was broken. And I think it's a very powerful shift, that not to make the developer feel that they broke it, but for them to acknowledge that, they not, I don't know, it sounds like a blame game now, but like, they did something wrong, right? They coded it wrong, but not intentionally. It's not like they went, I'm gonna build this thing wrong, right? But to help them realize that there might be a different way they could have improved that. And I think it's kind of a fun relationship to quality too, as opposed to it's broken, fix it, to how did it end up broken? Why did we deliver it broken early on? And what can we do to stop that in the future?
Right. Yeah. I find it, because here's the thing. Code is not the only way that bugs can get into a system. So I worked at a place where we used to charge credit card fees when people were checking out. They would buy, it was an airline, and they would buy their airline tickets, and we would add a fee. And suddenly the law changed. Nothing changed about our system except the context in which it operated. And now our feature became a bug. And so I don't like to position things as, oh, well, you did something wrong, developer, because that implies that the only way bugs are created is by them. It's not really true. But if you need hyping up testers and testing specialists, quality engineers, QAs, whatever you call yourself, check this out. Because I've got a Michelangelo quote for you that describes our job perfectly. Check this out. I saw the angel in the marble, and I carved until I set him free. Which is how I like to think about software testing. The state of the system, our understanding of it, is hidden in the marble, and our tests are chipping away at the ignorance to reveal the reality of the situation hidden within. And that's how I like to think about software testing. So the Vernon and Richard Show, bringing you a bit of culture and art.
I don't think we can beat that, and I don't think we should even try. So I think we should wrap it up there. If you enjoyed the episode, subscribe. Please encourage others to subscribe, share links to the episodes, and obviously we love feedback, good, bad. Share it, comment on it, tell us, please. We definitely want to listen, want to hear your thoughts and improve.
Yeah, please like, share, comment, let us know. We appreciate all the listeners that we've had so far. Blows me away that people are even listening at all. Absolutely incredible.
The football is still the same, so let's leave you in tension, Vernon, as you're losing currently 2-0.
There's no tension. It's abject misery. We have failed this season. It's not good, man. It's not good. Well, we've won a trophy. I guess that's okay.
The illusions of what was possible, and then in a matter of weeks, that's a bit. Is that Liverpool a bit like developers then? Building this product, hoping it's going to be really brilliant, and then just destroying it in a matter of days.
That is disrespectful to everybody that you mentioned in that comparison. Absolute disgrace. You see what I've got to deal with here, people? Friendly tester my ass.
Goodbye, everyone.
Grief. On that note, we love you. Good night. God bless.
Bye for now.
We'll see you on the next episode.